Hello, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. Today I'm going to be discussing how things used to be when I was growing up. What I'm going to be discussing is going to be off the cuff. I didn't write any notes or anything, and I'm sure after I'm through with this video I will think of other things, but just going back to childhood. Houses, not as many houses had their own washers and dryers. I remember as a kid going to the laundromat with my mother. She finally bought a washer and dryer in the 1960s, and I remember going into stores. They had their fluorescent lighting like they do now. They had their shelves. The drugstores and grocery stores were smaller, and also items had to be priced. There were no scanner registers. They were rung up on manual cash registers, and there was no key that calculated change. You had to figure out the change in your head when you gave the change back to the customers back then. I remember when I worked at the movie theater, it was at the concession stand. That was the first register I ever rang on, was a manual cash register. Later on, they brought in these tech registers, electric ones, and I mean, 1977 in Vienna was the first time I ever saw a scanner register. It was at Giant Food. Items before the 70s did not have barcodes on them, and I guess they existed in maybe like maybe early to mid 70s, and I never paid any attention to them. But I remember going to a Giant Food store in 1977 and watching the cashier scanning the barcodes, and I was like, "What is this?" I was like, "Man, this is different." And back in the day too, people didn't have most people didn't have air conditioners in their cars either. That was a luxury to have an air conditioner. You could get one put in. I remember my mother paying to have one put in our Pontiac when we were literally from Huntsville to Okinawa because of how hot the place Okinawa was. I remember that, and I remember going to school in Huntsville, Alabama. The Grace Lutheran had air conditioning in it, as did Roger Chaffee Elementary. I go to Okinawa, rude awakening. DoD schools, Quonset huts, no air conditioning, hot, very hot. I go to high school in Vienna, Virginia, same thing, no air conditioning in the classroom. So things just kind of went backwards in that regard. I remember first seeing people with cordless phones, probably in the maybe late 1980s, and people that had cell phones were mainly rich people, doctors, lawyers. You didn't see everybody with a cell phone. I remember if you had to call somebody, you didn't have your cell phone. You had to go to a payphone, put a quarter in, and make the phone call, or use a phone from somewhere. It's another memory I have. You traveled. There was no GPS, no, what do you call that thing? MapQuest. I got a map. I wrote the directions down on how to get to places, what exits to take. I did all that. I traveled, and that's how I did it back before GPS ever existed. Matter of fact, before I had GPS, I would use MapQuest and look at the instructions on how to get from one destination to another. People did not have cameras in their phones. You wanted to take a picture, you had to bring a camera, and also there were no kiosks in the drugstores like you see today, or no places where you could get the film developed in the stores. If you wanted your pictures, you had to mail them out and wait for them to come back. That's how that worked back in the day. I remember. And going back to phones, I remember the cell phones. The original ones were big, and then they came up with these real small, just regular cell phones. And then all of a sudden, Blackberries came out, and then the smartphones. Which smartphones were one of the best invention I've ever seen. I really like the variety a smartphone has. You can take pictures, take videos like what I'm doing now. You can surf the internet, use your GPS. You got all that stuff. Make a phone call. You can look up somebody's phone number. You don't have to go look for a phone book or call. What was that? What's it called? 411. I think that's what it was called back in the day for information directory assistance. No need anymore. I've had people ask me about maps, and road maps are not, people don't buy them anymore. You used to be able to get them free from the gas stations when I was a kid, and then they started charging for them, and they had these map books that outlined the whole counties, and 80, I think ADC maps, I believe is what they call in Virginia. But I remember also, as a kid, a movie theater was one big building, one big screen with a lot of seating. You went in there, you went. There was a box office from the outside. You paid for your ticket. You smelled the aroma immediately of the fresh popping popcorn and wanted popcorn. And then you go into the movie, big screen, lots of seats, only one movie. You sometimes on street and cities there'd be like 5 or 6 movie theaters around each other. I remember in Huntsville you had the Lyric on one side, the Martin across from it. I remember seeing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory at the Martin. I remember as a little kid seeing Jungle Book, and I think it was a double feature of Jungle Book and Charlie the Lonesome Cougar, and some Disney films. I remember seeing that at the Lyric Theater in Huntsville. And I remember seeing Sound of Music at the Madison Theater in Huntsville. And I also saw Sound of Music at the Woody's Drive-In. They had the Woody's in Whitesburg and Parkway and 72 in Huntsville. All those drive-ins. Last time I went to a drive-in was a 72 drive-in in August of 1971. It was a double feature of MASH and Butch Cassidy and the Seventh Dance Kid. I was a kid, so I mean neither of the movies were really that interesting to me. But that's another memory I have. Later on, movie theaters became duplexes, threeplexes. You had 3 screens, 2 screens, 3 screens, and they twinned out some of the single theaters. Then all of a sudden, you had multiplexes. You had 8 theaters, 15 theaters in one building. Now, like I've said before, I put this on my Facebook page. As a kid, just go to the movies. It was a single movie theater. Single movie theaters started closing to give way to twin and duplex and triplex theaters. Then those started to close. Next came the multiplex theaters. After that came technology. The multiplex theaters closed. You've got so many various ways to watch movies now. You've got that red box. That's one thing, and you can watch movies on your smartphone, on your laptop, on your desktop. There's just so many various options now, and there aren't as many movie theaters around anymore. It's getting to be too expensive. But those are various memories, and I remember growing up not having a smartphone. There was, as a matter of fact, the internet didn't exist when I was growing up. The internet, first time I heard about the internet was probably 1996. That was when the internet was just getting started, getting going. I used to see these commercials, and I'd see on the bottom www.something.com, and I was like, what the hell does that mean? And wondering. But I remember us getting a desktop computer in 1999 and getting to surf the internet, and it was I remember the original screen. What do you call it? The screen was it was like a television. You call it the monitor, maybe? I can't think right now. Anyway, I believe that's what it was called, and it was like a television set. Now just have a flat screen, which is a lot better. I mean, technology has come up with all kinds of various things, and prior to personal computers in the home, computers were big machines at one time. My dad worked in computers, as a matter of fact, and they were as big as like a CVS store. These were big, complicated machines, reel to reel. And I remember running the reel to reel projectors in school, the film projectors, the 8mm, 16mm. Never got to run a 35mm projector. I worked in the movie theater. I got a little bit of off the payroll training on the projectors, but never really got into being a projectionist. Was never really given the offer or anything to be one when an opening came up. So I never really got the experience of running a 35mm. I did get to watch them in action, watch the projectionists run them. I remember they came on like 16.5-minute reels maybe, and later I remember the theater I worked at in Tyson's Corner, they would take all those small reels, and they, instead of changing reels every 16 minutes, they had it spliced onto a real big reel, and they had to put that together for the movie, and then when they had to ship it back, they had to break the print down and put it back on those small reels and put it in a case for it to be taken away. That was another thing I remember. And I have not been to a movie theater in over 10 years. I don't know what, I have no idea what concession stands are like or anything, what they have to offer. I've heard there's a lot more to offer in the movie theaters, like hamburgers and stuff. That's what somebody was telling me. When I worked at Tyson's, it was just popcorn, drinks, and candy, and that was it. I worked at Fair Oaks. They did have nachos and in addition, and hot dogs. I do remember that. That was the United Artists Theaters, but that's basically the memories I have. I'm trying to think of, like I was saying, I tell the youth of today that when I grew up, there were no home computers, there were no smartphones, and it's hard for them to fathom the fact that those things didn't exist. You couldn't just go take a picture. If you wanted to take a picture, like I said, you had to bring a camera with you. It wasn't practical. Somebody asked me when I used to work at the movie theater during the 80s, when I met some of the Redskin players, why didn't get in a picture with them? Well, there were, like I was saying, the smartphones were not invented. That you could put in your pocket. I would have to have carried a camera to work and had to keep an eye on to, make sure nobody steals it. So it just it wasn't practical to be taking a camera with you to work. And I'm not sure really whether management would have liked people bringing cameras to work. I know people did sometimes and would take pictures of different employees. I've gotten pictures on my Roth Tyson's Corner 8 Theater Memories Facebook page and from various things of the theater. So I'm glad I have, because it shows what it looked like and everything. The theater no longer exists in Tyson's Corner. It was 5 theaters and then 8 theaters, and it's been chopped up into various businesses. The last I saw, I think 2011, part of it was unoccupied. I have no idea what's going on with it now. I haven't been out to Tyson's Corner in quite a while, but those are basic memories I have of my childhood. I said you couldn't go on the internet and look a phone number up. You had to, and you didn't. I remember also late 70s answering machines coming out, and I'd never heard of those. You call and then you get a recording. I don't know when those actually started. They may have started in the late 60s, but I remember like 1977 was the first time I heard an answering machine when I called. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, another invention too that came out was I remember VCRs coming out in the 70s, and you could record television shows. You didn't have to worry about not being home. If you weren't home, you didn't see the show. Or if you weren't, in front of a television, you could record it and watch the show later. And I knew back then they were going to come up with some kind of technology that would be better than VHS tapes, the cellophane tapes. And sure enough, they came up with the DVDs that replaced them. And eventually, the technology caused places like Blockbuster Video, Errol's Video, the various video stores to all go out of business. There's no market for it anymore with the advanced technology. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Nothing else that I can think of at the moment. I know you can listen to radio shows now on your computer. A lot different from back when I grew up too. Also you didn't. I remember you didn't have remote controls. If you wanted to change the channel, you had to go up to the television and change it yourself. But you didn't really have that many channels to watch. Just NBC, ABC, CBS, and maybe PBS, and you had some UHF channels, which were hard to work with, hard to pinpoint, because the dial with the VHF was just push, turn like that. UHF was like that. It was an entirely different setup. I remember trying to pinpoint a show on UHF I remember the quality wasn't as good either for UHF television, and there were various cable networks back then too. This in the early 70s, and where you could get. I remember in Huntsville, my parents did have the cable, and we could get televisions in Nashville, Tennessee. I remember from Huntsville. Nashville's about an hour and a half north of Huntsville, and that's basically all I can think of. I keep saying that's all, but I think it's to the point where I'm going to have to come to a conclusion on this one. As I've said before, like, subscribe, share. Looking for a partner, looking for a producer. As always, thanks for watching.